typically British understatement when I tell you that the CBC's new Monday night series will be no ordinary television show. On the contrary, show of the week will be, in a word, sensational. It'll thrill you, chill you, kill you. It'll make you ping pang, go walla walla bing bang, and all for the price of 1 hour a week. Thrill to the blood-curdling adventures of high drama. Laugh to the world's jokesters and funny men. We dare you to watch this gala series on your TV screens, because if you choose not to, we'll be so terribly disappointed we'll never talk to you again. You'll be absolutely crushed if you miss it, because this show is going to be, as the French say, Chérie, if you really love me, please, how you say it in English, get with it. And I'll say again and again to the friendly inhabitants of this potentially great country that lies across the 49th parallel from us, I say to them, what's the matter, you crazy? How many times am I going to tell you? All the paisans are going to watch your show of the week, or I'm going to make lots of trouble. Capi? You take your average show of the week, Billy. It's going to be a humdinger of a ring-ding-doo. And keep your shirt on, cubba. You won't find it hard to stay by your television screen for 1 measly hour a week. Well, the morning, the holiday drama, America used to like England on the birth So for goodness sake, have a little pity on a poor, wee, starving television network. Oh, Klosch, ich weiß nicht, was soll es bedeuten. Ach, mir nichts kein Scheinig, euch Schmerzen, warum nicht Lichter lacht. Und you will obey our order.
That was a clip from CBC's very first broadcast. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Homburg Theatre in the Confederation Centre of the Arts. My name is Adam Brazier. Tonight, we gather together to celebrate a Canadian icon, an actor, a writer, a journalist, comedian, and self-appointed blowhard for the common man. Tonight, we celebrate the legacy of Mr. Don Harron. Yes, member of the Order of Canada, named to the Order of Ontario for his contributions to the Canadian entertainment industry, Gemini Lifetime Achievement Award winner, father, grandfather, partner, and friend. This evening we will hear from many of Don's loved ones. Although his children are not able to join us here this evening, there is one child of Don's that always remains on the island, our little Anne, our Anne of Green Gables, the musical. Now, this began as a TV musical special on CBC until one day the Queen heard Maida Rogerson sing the title song of the show in this theater some 51 years ago. It was then that Don, Maver, and the Campbells received a royal decree to finish the stage version of this timeless tale. Please join me in welcoming Maida Rogerson back to our stage.
Anne of Green Gables, never change. We like you just this way. Anne of Green Gables, sweet and strange, stay as you are today. Though blossoms fade and friends must part, old grow the songs we've sung. Anne of Green Gables, in my heart you are forever young. Young as the blossoms fade and friends must part. Old grow the songs we've sung, and of green gables in my heart you are forever
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. My name is Jessie Inman, and I have the honor of being the CEO of Confederation Center of the Arts. Tonight, I'm going to read you a poem written by Roseanne Mosey. Don Harron's life celebrated through poetry. Don's epic journey, amazing grace, standing ovation, holy path, treasured answer, dearest calling, sacred delight, flourishing joy, soul's brilliance, art of the divine, nourishing gift, celebrated audience, the recital, inspiring virtuoso, God's radiance, all is grace, blessed embrace, living legacy, precious composition, sharing splendor, revered silver lining, heartwarming masterpiece with love, cherished salutation, fragrant memories, theatrical beauty, wonderful productions, impeccable performance, heavenly encore, Don's epic journey, amazing grace. Thank you.
That's when I got my phone call. I'm in California doing schlock television, and Maver calls me up and says, Her Majesty heard the title song of your little television musical and said, where's the rest of the share? She said, and Maver said, Buster, that is a command to perform. And all I said was, get me the rights. This was in, I think, November. And Maver slogged away in New York, and with Ia Page was now Ferrara, Strauss, and Giroux. And it was April before we got the rights. And I was determined I would not do anything until we had the rights. And we were due to open in June. And I'm in the middle of other 12 o'clock high at Burke's Law and everything. And Norman and I are on the phone because we had to add a lot of musical numbers. And I couldn't get there. Thank God Alan Lund sort of arranged the scenes the way he should be, and he was unerring in his correctness. Maver wrote 3 of the best songs in the show. Open the Windows.
The words.
I Can't Find the Words, which is done twice in the show. And Did You Hear, Did You Hear? So thank God for all these people, because I was useless.
In the quiet, misty morning, when the moon has gone to bed, when the sparrows stop their singing, and the sky is clear and red.
Good evening. My name is Rick Warren. I was fortunate enough to spend 46 years in this wonderful building working as a stagehand. There are several people to whom I owe thanks for that good fortune. One of them is Don Harron. I knew the first time I worked a performance of Anne of Green Gables that I was in the presence of something very special, and I still felt the same way some 3,300 performances later when I worked my final performance before retiring. Don was a part of the writing team that brought L.M. Montgomery's universally loved story to life, and I do mean universally loved. I recall arriving at work early one morning and encountering a Japanese family who descended upon me as I unlocked the stage door. They waved tickets at me, which when I looked at them were for that evening's performance of Anne. It quickly became apparent that this family had no understanding of the English language, nor I of theirs. I eventually clued in that their confusion was concerning the 8 o'clock performance time printed on the ticket. They were at the center before 7 a.m. awaiting an 8 a.m. performance. But of course there was none. I took my pen, scratched out the 8, and replaced it with 20. An aha moment occurred for the family, and realizing they were 12 hours too early, they poured into the rental car and sped away. The Japanese weren't the only ones to fall in love with the show. Everyone did. Just as occurred in so many other island homes, I would come home from work to discover my daughter with her friends in our living room, singing and dancing one of the full cast production numbers from Anne, while my daughter directed and choreographed. Don would have loved to see that. He used his wit at any opportunity. He always had a clever opening night card for the company. I remember one of those famous cards wishing a great opening night to Anne with a knee, which Don being Don had spelled K-N-E-E, Anne with a knee. Don's gift for writing and performing sustained the center through the good years of sold-out houses, the not-too-bad years when Anne played with a second or third show which tried but didn't quite attain Anne's universal appeal, and the not-so-good years when tight finances prevented the center from mounting any show to run in repertoire with Anne. Without Anne, who knows what would have happened to the festival and the livelihood of so many performers, directors, designers, musicians, stagehands, and so many more. Don was equally willing to be the victim of a joke as he was the perpetrator. One year, Nancy White wrote and staged an Anne of Green Gables parody in the studio theater. In the climatic scene, Anne is sitting at Matthew's feet while Matthew is slouching in his rocking chair singing Anne of Green Gables Never Change. Anne stops Matthew, pops up, and with a quizzical look says to him, "But Matthew, wouldn't that be unsanitary?" When Don saw the parody, he roared with his best Charlie Farquharson horse laugh. That laugh is just one of the many things that we will miss.
Weren't we hearing the beginnings of the Charlie Farquharson character in that laugh there? Because there
No,
was a
no.
hint of Charlie in some of it.
Charlie Farquharson was born in 1952. It was a 4-minute delivery in spring thaw.
52?
52, 25 years ago. I first found him in 1942 when I worked on a farm in Ontario. They're all standing around. I was in a thrashing game. They're all standing around saying, "My God, she'd be your leech, leech on her father's side." And I was fascinated by all these family relationships, and that's when it started. And it took me 10 years really to bring it up fully into the open, to come out of the closet without Charlie Farquharson.
Charlie Farquharson for KORN. All the news about little-known people who are still doing all the well-known things. Congressman Clint Wicks is back in town shaking hands for his off-year re-election. He spoke last night at the Odd Fellows Hall and was delighted to see such a dense crowd. Because when they're dense, they don't ask no embarrassing questions. Now, Clint spent most of his time defending what he calls your status quo, which is Pig Latin for the mess we're all in. Somebody asked him if politics was crooked, and he said if he thought there was something crooked about politics, he'd get out of it. Well, the question on everybody's lips was, how much?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. What a thrill to be here to honor a great Canadian. It's my profound honor and stunning responsibility to direct Don's play, Anne of Green Gables, a musical this year. I got to tell you, I was so thrilled to be asked to be a part of this celebration tonight because I'm a person who really speaks from the hip. And I got to tell you, I am so ticked off at Don Harron for dying. I have been associated with this building and with this festival for 23 years, and for at least 20 of those, my ambition has been to direct this show. And when I was invited last year, I said yes without hesitation because I had a secret weapon. I had a friend, a colleague, a mentor, and a neighbor, Don Harron. I wanted to help bring his vision of Anne of Green Gables to the stage. So this winter, when I was in Ontario doing a different show, I learned about Don's passing, and I was devastated, as we all were. There were so many questions. There are so many questions I wanted to ask Don. And I remember when we did the production of the show at the Elgin Theatre in 2008 and the celebration of the 100th anniversary of the publication of the novel. Following some of the student performances, we had question periods, and I remember this one young lady asked Don how he ever chose what to do because the books were so good. How would he choose what to put in a play? And Don said, my first instinct was to go with what I remembered. And so he said he remembered all the best parts. He wanted to put them in the play. But he said when I needed other information, I just relied on the book. So when I was in Ontario wandering the cold streets of Waterloo, really, really upset about Don's passing, and foreseeing this process of putting the play together, I was looking for something, for some kind of guidance, and this is a true story. In the communities at Waterloo at that time, and still, there are little community boxes where you can exchange books. The idea is when you find a book you like and you finish reading it, you can take that book to the box and exchange it. I was walking the dog, and I came across one of these books, and there, in the window, was this book, this very book. I know who put it there. Thanks, Don. I get the message. I'm a huge fan of Don Harron's, and I'm honored to be able to mount his show. I'm one of many fans, and many famous fans. I'm not famous, they are. This one is Norman Jewison, the famous Canadian director, actor, producer, and founder of the Canadian Film Centre. He sent these thoughts along. He says, I knew Don Harron for most of my life. When I was a young student at Victoria College, he was about 3 or 4 years ahead of me, and I tried to follow in his footsteps. When Don was a young actor in London, England, I was a struggling young writer for BBC television. I used to babysit his infant daughter, Martha, in return for his help with comedy sketches I was writing. He was a lot smarter than I and a very gifted writer and actor. We both returned to Canada in the 1950s. We both performed together in a theatrical revue called Spring Thaw, produced by Dora Maver Moore at the Museum Theatre. It was very popular, a full house every night. In one sketch, I played Teeter Kennedy, a hockey star being interviewed by Don, a CBC interviewer. It was in Spring Thaw that Don created a monologue for his alter ego, Charlie Farquharson. I told Don that all my relatives who live on farms down around Baileyboro and Warsaw, Ontario, talked like Charlie. I told him about my cousin, Valida Drain, who lived on a farm near Lakefield. He put Valida in his monologue. He also borrowed my father's old cap for his costume, and he never gave it back. He used the same costume for all those years, and Claudette told me that it would be donated to the Theatre Museum Canada. I remember being master of ceremonies at his 80th birthday party, where I appeared as one of Charlie's neighbors. I had little trouble with the accent because all my country cousins sounded like Charlie. Don was a unique personality, funny, clever, urbane, and gifted, a true artist, and specifically Canadian. He was a true original, a Canadian treasure that will be missed by everyone. With our love and condolences, Norman and Lynn Jewison. Absolutely. And now it is my pleasure to once again welcome back the Confederation Centre Youth Chorus under the direction of Donald Fraser.
Good evening. My name is Gary Krasel, and I've had the fortune to work here for the first 30 years of the festival and the center and to work with Don Harron. I must say I'm truly honored to be here to ask to say a few words, and few words it will be. But I can remember the very first time I met Don. I was 17 years old, and it was at one of the many, many parties we had over in Kepik at a cottage over there. Don always made us feel like part of the crew and part of the whole event with all these people coming down from Toronto. But he made us, the locals, feel welcome and part of it all. Working that very first show of Anne has also been a very proud moment for me. Don wasn't at the opening night, but came down later that summer. I can remember the next year in 1966, we were doing Ottawa Man, and Don was in Ottawa Man starring with Kate Reid. And I remember one night Don on the stage before it started went out, and there was a scene in it where Kate Reid was drinking out of a teapot, and he put real scotch in the teapot. She took the tea and poured it and drank it and never fizzed her a bit. So everybody knows how much she loved her scotch. One of the other stories, I brought this out, one of our many trips and travels with Don, we went to Japan in 1970 with Anne of Green Gables. And one of the, as we're walking around, the Japanese were treating us royally, and as we're walking around, they took us on various tours, and we went to a park where they had all these tame deer were walking all over the place. And it just happens, one of the deer come up and butted Don right from behind, and he went flying onto the ground. And the Japanese were quite devastated by someone in Don's stature would have this happen to him. It didn't bother Don in the least. He just got up and laughed. But that night at supper, we're all sitting around having dinner, and Don thought, he leaned over and he says, "We may be eating Bambi here. I'm not sure," he said. When I was director of theater a number of years later, I had to deal with three of the most talented, passionate, artistic, and somewhat temperamental men in Canadian theater: Alan Lund, Norman Campbell, and Don Harron. And it was never easy. It was never easy to get a consensus from them on who was to play Anne. I always had to get Don and Norman's okay on who was going to play Anne of Green Gables that year, much to the chagrin of Alan Lund, who directed them and choreographed them and thought he should have the final decision. And there was quite a few arguments about who would be playing Anne. And I can remember sitting through many, many auditions with the three of them across Canada. It was always tense. And Norman and Alan would get into this and that, and I could always go to Don, and there was the voice of reason there with Don. And Don would go and talk to Norman and get a consensus on who was to play Anne. It was always just to get that whole audition thing over with and everybody on the same level. Let me give you a quick example of what it was like to deal with, no, I'm going to go a little more theatrical here. Right now, I think at this moment, Norman Campbell, and Alan Lund, and Don Harron are sitting around working on a play about heaven. As usual, they're arguing. Alan, as director and choreographer, wants Fred Astaire to play God. Norman wants Laurence Olivier, and Don wants George Burns. This is a scenario I remember all too well. Assuming St. Peter would be the director of theater and try to get this solved, he'd go to Don, and Don, being a professional, would get a consensus from, with all three of them. And they ended up settling on Robin Williams. Don was a friend, and I could honestly call him a friend. He would drop into the hotel where I've been working for the last 20 years, and he'd have a coffee with me, and we'd talk about a lot of the old times. And Don last year was at the hotel for a reception in his honor. And I had a script with me, a bit of a pack rat, and I had a script with me from that very first show we did in 1965. And I wanted to get Don to sign it. And Don signed it for me, and he said, "To Gary, in memory of that incredible year, best wishes, Don." I say, Don, thank you for those incredible 50 years you've given us all, because if it hadn't been for you. Don, your show down here may be over, but your memories you created will go on forever. I don't know if this is possible, Don, with Norman and Alan up there with you, buddy, but rest in peace.
where in that whole spectrum does the real Don Harron lie? Are you the clown? Are you the philosopher? Or,
See, I happen to think that humor is very serious. I happen to think that it's like poetry. It happens to say it in a much shorter way than prose and even fiction. I just think that I admire poets. I can't write poetry, but I love poets. I love the way they capsulize everything. And I love cartoonists who do it in a picture with a couple of words or in even no words. And that's the ideal that I aspire toward, to say it with a minimum amount of words in the least amount of time.
Good evening. My name is Glenda Landry, and I have been given the wonderful opportunity of reading a memorial letter from Captain Kirk of the Starship Enterprise. I knew of Don from the college shows he did. Then I met him at the CBC, and it was instant fun. We acted together at Stratford. Again, he was as funny and as comical as anybody could be. Then we went our separate ways, and I saw him only occasionally over the years. But that crazy, lopsided grin and the farcical characters he played remained indelibly imprinted on both my and the Canadian public's psyche. The world is a little less joyful because of Don's passing. William Shatner.
Look over your shoulder and watch what I do. You'll learn to get bolder. I'll feed you your cue. I'll set the example. Just copy your pal. Look over your shoulder and up your morale. I take the cream of the army crop. We can skim it, you'll see. We can take it right off the top, just you trust in me. I finished the briefing, you've got all the gem. Remember the chief thing is knowing just when. No need to grow older, no need to despair. Look over your shoulder and I'll be there. Take the cream of the army crop. We can skim it, you'll see. We can take it right off the top. Just you trust in me. I finished the briefing. You've got all the gen. Remember the chief thing is knowing just when. No need to grow older. No need to despair. Look over your shoulder, look over your shoulder, look over your shoulder, and I'll be
He was a handsome devil, wasn't he? Hi there, my name is Charlotte Moore, and I am reading a letter from the Office of the Governor General. Dear members of the family of Don Harron, my wife and I are deeply saddened to hear of your loss. Our nation has lost an artistic luminary in Don Harron. He will long be remembered for his towering contributions to the Canadian theatre, television, and radio broadcasting, notably his timeless writing for Anne of Green Gables the musical and his unforgettable character, Charlie Farquharson. I know that he will be deeply missed by all whose lives he touched. Please take comfort in knowing that all the members of the Order of Canada join me in offering you our condolences. May good memories sustain you through this time. With deepest sympathy, David Johnson.
Today I pay tribute to the late Don Harron, an unforgettable Canadian actor, comedian, cartoonist, and writer. He entertained generations of Canadians with his contagious passion and light heart. Notably, he performed as his comic alter ego Charlie Ferguson, a folksy storyteller poking fun at almost anything Canadian, often making politicians the target. He showed us the joy of laughing at ourselves. As Charlie, he performed on Canadian radio, TV, and a variety of shows like Hee Haw in the United States. His serious side had him hosting CBC's Morningside, and in theatre, acting on stages from London, England to Stratford, Ontario. His most celebrated work was helping to bring the island classic Anne of Green Gables alive to the stage, having been performed for 50 consecutive years at the Charlottetown Festival. As Charlie would say in his tattered sweater, hee-haw, on to the next chapter. On behalf of the House, we thank you, Don, for your wit, your passion, and your love for this country.
Christopher Plummer's eulogy, referred to by Charlie as some plumber. And so, the handsome dog, the golden lad with the wicked wit and the penchant for puns, has quit our shores and left us in a lurch. Gone, too, is that beloved host of characters he invented, the many sides of himself, Charlie Farquharson, Val de Drain, Valerie Rosedale, and such other outrageous creations, all intended to poke fun and to wage war against the Philistines. In a country notoriously slow to recognize its own talent, Donald Harron was a force to contend with, a fierce defender of the faith. While we were floundering about dying to be regarded as serious professionals, he held us together with his encouragement, his wisdom, and intellect. And with a fine sense of satire on the tip of his fiery pen, he lit a flame that helped shame Canada into action. Both our careers brought us together early on. Way back then, he was my mentor and my very best friend. We shared a love of the written word, a love for jazz, and a love of girls. We also shared our young days on the stage in Canada and on Broadway. Every play I was in, so was Don. We toured the American continent, beg your pardon, at least twice by train, performing in every state. Don, being a Rhodes Scholar, didn't want to outshine me, so he christened me a Road Scholar. I continued to steal from his makeup box regularly and was always borrowing money from him. God, I must owe him a fortune. But he never complained. And when the curtain came down and the late nights rolled into the long haze, he would keep us laughing till our hearts could burst. There are certain beings whose influence is so powerful and profound that they actually become a part of one and seem never to let go. And when they decide it's time to vanish, to depart, it's not really possible to mourn them or to miss them in any way because, quite simply, they're still here. They never really left. I'm speaking, of course, of Don and Charlie and Valda and Valerie and all the aliases, but mostly of Don himself, my old friend, my angel of mirth, Christopher Plummer. I would now like to invite to the stage the love of his life. Please welcome Claudette Garreau.
Words fail me, and there certainly would not be enough to express my gratitude at the sight of all of you here tonight to celebrate and honor the man who was the center of my life for 11 years, 4 months, and 3 days. I want to acknowledge the Confederation Center for making this possible. It's a beautiful evening, brings a lot of memories, and repeats, I'm afraid, because I'm going to repeat stuff that you heard already. I'm filled with emotion, so many emotion. A simple thank you from the bottom of my heart will have to suffice. Just in case you're wondering, in 2003, Don was diagnosed with prostate cancer. With good care and good medication, he was good for another 10 years. In the spring of 2013, the cancer has spread to his bones, and he was very weak. But again, with brand new medication, he was good for another 18 months. Princess Margaret could not do enough for him. All doctors are not created equal. On the 30th of December, on my birthday, we found out he no longer had any options. He lasted another 19 days. He was so looking forward to come here again this summer. He was making plans of jumping over the bridge with my daughter at Basin Point, Basin Head, whatever that is, place. Not me, him. He was all set to go. Don's most lasting gift to the nation is indeed this adaptation of Anne of Green Gables. And at this stage, yes, I would like to point out that Maida Rogerson, I knew I would screw it up, in 1963, when she sang it for the Queen, she is responsible for Anne being here for 51 years this summer. We saw too many to mention. Believe me, they are not all created equal. However, there are some that are just, they keep in your mind, you cannot forget them. There's one that we saw that was in Rostern, Saskatchewan, a small Mennonite community of 1,600 people, an hour north of Saskatoon. An old railway station had been converted into a theater, a 120-seat theater. Very small stage, no wings. The cast had to change outside in the caboose. Don had received a call in September from a lady, is it possible to do Anne with 6 people? To which he said, certainly not. 7. It can be done with 7. Anne has to remain Anne, and the rest of the cast can do multiple roles. Well, Marilla was played by a big, stout woman, would take off the apron, put a big bow in her hair, and she's now Prissy Andrews. Matthew played a teacher. Yeah, brother and sister, never mind. In the school scene, oh yeah, there's one girl who played 4 roles. She played Josie, Josie Pye, Josie's mother. She was Diana and Lucilla. So I asked her, how did the rehearsal go? She said, oh, it was dizzying. And the director said there was a lot of complaint. Hell, that's never gonna work. There's no way that's gonna work. Oh, the school scene, well, hell, there's hardly anybody there. However, he's got 2 actors. You have Diana and Anne, and Josie Pye, who was absolutely brilliant going from Diana to Josie Pye. It was, there's 2 benches, right? So up front you have Diana and Anne. She would go to the other bench and become, Josie Pye, little bitchy. Well, she did it a few times, and the last one, it's almost like she's kicking her in the bum, right? Diana comes back and turns around like, what's with you? You know, like, what, anyways. So there's two actors that have come with cardboard faces. So out of two actors, you had 6 kids. It was stunning. So Anne of Green Gable, with 7 people, directed by Stephen Heatley, in a small little railway station, was brilliant and so clever. And he sold out for a whole month. Now, Don and myself were working downstairs at the time, Charlie Farquharson and them others. Yeah, and guess what them others were? So we suggested that we could do a fundraiser for them. We brought our costume, I bought my recorded music, and they found a place for us. It was the gymnasium in the school, the Mennonite school. 350 people showed up, $5,000 was raised, and a lady actually matched that amount. And the following year, they had new seats in the theater and not kitchen chairs. That was very good. Don was associated with Easter Seals for 25 years. He loved working with his kids, and he really had a lot of respect for them and their ability to deal with their physical challenges. So he decided that he wanted to do a special rendition of Anne of Disabled. Malcolm Black directed, Fan Watkin was the musical director, and to come on stage, they locked in their wheelchairs, and Anne came by train. It was beautiful, it was wonderful. It was done twice. The second time, one of the children could not make it, so Don filled in. They had no problem telling him he was not very good. I'm lost here. The very first time I saw Anne of Green Gable, I sat there at the opening, Don Harron on one side, Elaine Campbell on the other side. I lost it from Anne of Green Gable at the top, and I was a complete mess when Marilla sings the word at the end. And I do that every year. There's no hope for me here. Last summer, for the 50th anniversary, Don was on stage twice. And Annie Allen, the director, had told him, you can speak 5 or 6 minutes. You don't know Harron. He comes on stage, much to the delight of the audience, telling them how the whole show came about. It was wonderful. Later on in the season, Annie Allen is there, gonna help him to the chair in the middle of the stage because he had a cane and he was a little unsteady at the time. But at the very last minute, there is no way that's gonna happen. He walked on stage by himself, very, very steady. But Charlie Farquharson talking about Anne of Green Gages. And he was not, nah, she's very unsanitary, she don't change. He was not impressed. He walked out of here to a stand-up ovulation, as Charlie called them. Now, Don, working with him, was not very fond of taking bows. He just, nah, I'm out of here, I just finished, I took my bow, I'm out of here. Well, working in London, Ontario one time, somebody really insisted, Don, you have to come back on stage. I said, he's there changing, it's not happening. I said, Don, please, please come back. So he did, in his underwear. Yeah. For the 40th anniversary, he passed a comment that through the years, he probably had given work to at least 10,000 people. I would say more than that by now. in the 50th anniversary. Aside from writing 17 books, 4 of them in English, the rest of them in Charlese or Farquharsonese or whatever you want to call it, as you know, he did everything in the TV business, the TV, the film, stage, from Shakespeare to Panto. And in 2007, he decided to do something he had never done before. So he wrote a very saucy version of a revised and circumcised, old fairy tale. It was for the Toronto Fringe Festival. It was called Rumple Foreskin. And he played the title role. It's been talked about, so you might as well see it. No, I'm not going to wear it. Look like an idiot. That was Norman Jewison's father, not even Norman himself. And it was for the very first day of CBC, the very first night when he was talking, when he was so very young at the very top of the show. That's when he went to the studio next door, panicking, I need a costume for Charlie. Because normally he would wear his father's old suit, short sleeve and short pants, you know. But now it has to be serious. So he ended up with a cap that belonged to Norman Jewison. The other Norman that he didn't know at the time this is the original. Just a little holy. When I saw that sweater the first time, I didn't know where the sleeves were. It was just a massive hole. It was like a puzzle. But like a farm wife, I would make do with whatever I happened to have on hand. So I crocheted patches for the sleeve. There is a knitted piece in the back. And the fact that the color is not right or the texture is not the same did not really matter. But it didn't matter to him. Okay, where am I here? Oh, both items are supposed to go back. He promised. He faithfully promised that he was going to return them the following day. 63 years later, they're still here. I would put that in the washing machine with socks. It didn't matter. It washed beautifully. Norm Campbell would come and see the show every so often and says, nah, not to see you. I'm coming here to visit my sweater. And it's all going to the theater museum. Not anytime soon. No, I'm not ready. Where do you start? How do you separate the present from the past? How do you deal with all the things you thought would last, but didn't last? With bits of memories hanging here and there. I look around and don't know where to start. While singing in a bar in Ottawa in 1973, Catherine McKinnon approached me to see if I would like to do a TV show. I said, yes, I'd love to do a TV show. Norman Campbell was directing. Don Harron was one of the many writers. I saw Don around the studio while we were doing, shh, it's the news, not shit's the news. Shh, it's the news. But I didn't know him. He was too busy. He was rewriting. He was getting ready for his own spot on the TV. And I was in my dressing room waiting for my turn to be on set. I didn't know I was allowed to be there to watch the other one work, like Jack Duffy and Barbara Hamilton and Gordon Pinson, what am I saying? I usually stayed in my dressing room. I was too shy. But being in Ottawa, I met a Mountie, and I married him. And I stopped singing for 25 years. Went silent, not a sound, not a note. When Don came back in my life 26 years later, I no longer had the Mountie. We were divorced. But I needed a job. So I ended up being his occasional driver to out-of-town gigs that he was doing, performing. After he was finished, if he was not too tired and sleeping, he would listen to the jazz station. And so help me, he knew lyrics to absolutely every obscure songs. From top to bottom, he knew absolutely everything. But he could not hold a tune in a bag. The second note was already off key. Oh, it was something else. Oh, sure, I watch Hee Haw. But I was watching for Roy Clark. I was watching for Gordy Tapp because I had worked with Gordy Tapp. I had gone overseas entertaining the troops in the Gaza Strip, in France and Germany, in the Arctic Circle. So I was, I wanted to see him. But Charlie Farquharson I could not hear what he was saying. I could hardly speak English then. Still have a problem today, but we won't go there. So consequently, Charlie, he was just another man on the show with the Silicon Valley girl that he called them. But I remember the fans. You remember the fans? Where, oh, where are you tonight? Why did you leave me here all alone? I searched the world over and thought you were true love. You met another and you was gone. You remember that? Charlie was the intellectual on that show. So one summer day, I had to drive him. Oh my God, it had to be 95 degrees if a degree. It was so hot. And he was doing a plowing match affair. So it's daytime, and all you have would be farmers there, showing the tractors and farm equipment and all this stuff. And he's there, and I dare suggest, oh, don't wear the sweater, it's too hot. How was I supposed to know that the hat and the sweater is Charlie? Well, if you don't know what you don't know that you don't know what you don't know. And I didn't know. I didn't know anything about Charlie. And there was a parade going through the fields and such. And he insisted that I would be in the car with him. A 1927 old Ford, very comfy. And we were going through the fields and such, behind the tractors and all the equipment. But the joy and amazement that I saw on the smiling faces was something of an eye-opener for me. I may not have known anything about Charlie, but that day, his presence was like a big present for them. It was the joy to see them. It was such a gift. The amazing part is Don did not realize to what extent it was affecting them. I cannot tell you how pleased I was to witness the love and respect he got from many actors when he was doing shows or TV and such. The reverence and in their demeanors was so wonderful to see. The Red-Green Show, when Charlie Farquharson was made an honorary member of the Possum Lodge. He got the same treatment when he performed in a panto in Toronto in Cinderella, where he played the father, Cinderella's father. Did you know she had a father? I never heard of it. The father for Cinderella, and also the father to the prince, who was played by Adam Brazier. Yes, it was wonderful. Ross Petty could not believe that Don was 80 years old. He has so much vigor and so much hump into him. And in that show, he dared show the children in the show, and you know how you boo all the time. Well, he showed the kids how to, like Charlie. And you could hear this throughout the audience after that, like, shut up. Don created many other characters as well. Valerie Rosedale, Charlie's rich city cousin. When I finished with her makeup, he looked better than me. And he sure as hell had better legs than me. Oh, I can't believe it. He was so drop-dead gorgeous. Anyways. Don gladly shared the stage with me. I am an unknown quantity, a surprise. But he wanted me by his side. He wanted me in the same spotlight, showing that I too could be funny. And he wrote many sketches for us. And if you can picture this, dear old Charlie coming to Montreal, ordering a meal in French. Qu'est-ce que c'est? Yeah. And I was a very pissed off waitress who had it up to here with the Anglo practicing their French on me. By the time the sketch was finished, he did not speak French. I spoke Parisian. Hamish Moultrie Farquharson, another Charlie's cousin. He was the hayseed straight from Scotland, with the tam o' shanter and the hair to here and the big bushy eyebrows, those with the kilt. And sometimes he had socks on, sometimes not. And I said, what happened? He still had these little ribbons, you know, that they wear with the whatever. And he comes without the socks. What happened to the socks? I couldn't find them. Yeah. Every night, David Warwick and myself would sit in the wing, listening to what new gem is going to come up with that night. Because Don was a news hound. The radio, the TV, newspaper, all kinds of things where he could get news. And you would always have Charlie up to date, skewering the latest political figure on top of the news. Can you just imagine what he would do now? With the latest material on the Hill? Yeah, the mirth and merriment is endless. Charlie always said the things that you and I would like to say, and he always got away with it. You and I couldn't do that. The hills are alive with the sound of scandal. Featuring, he would say, Stevie Harvey, Fluffy McDuffie, Pamela Walleye, and the Senate shenanigans. Don was always gracious and welcoming, no matter who, no matter where, no matter when. He had the gift of making you feel like you were the only person in the room. That was a gift that he had. He was always interested in what people had to say. He was generous with his time with the common people. They were his people. And I have witnessed many times how he affected his people, the sheer joy he brought to them by just being there. Don was not a snob. He was not easily impressed by the high mucky-mucks and the powerful people, but he had a very respectful for the everyday people. He didn't care much for bullshittering. That's a word that he had in his latest book, My Double Life, 60 Years of Farquharson Around with Don Harron. Considering his many accomplishments, Don was to the deepest part of him an incredibly and genuinely modest man. I've never seen him play the star. Never. He did not have any pretension in him. He was humble to the core. That was his DNA. Don was a quiet man, and like many comics, very serious man. He was difficult to interview. It was usually changed into a Charlie interview, so you didn't get to know Don Harron, except through Charlie. However, in his later years, he did open up somewhat in the book and also in some articles. If you read Charlie out loud, yeah, I think it will help, because Charlie speaks and writes the same way. So it's not difficult to me anyways. I have to read out, oh, that's what he's saying. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. Many times through the years, his name has been forwarded and submitted for the Canadian Walk of Fame, to no avail. But Don didn't really care. He said, I don't want people walking over me. This may have to change a bit, because on the 1st of July, I will be in Stratford, where the city of Stratford is giving Don a bronze star, and it will be installed in the fall in front of the Avon Theatre in Stratford. Yeah, you won't be pleased about that one. Now, unless I can find a spot where there was not too many people walking all over him. I'll try. When Don came back into my life all these years ago, he was just a man. A drop-dead gorgeous man, mind you, but just a man. He gladly added my 4 daughters to his family: Claudine, Christine, Caroline, and Janine Farquhar. Yeah, what were the odds? Another coincidence, all their middle names is Anne with an E. Didn't know. He loved staying at home, just the 2 of us, holding hands, watching old movies. He was always reading something, and if there was something on toilet paper, he would have read that too, I'm sure. Don was thrilled a couple of years ago to be made an IATC brother. Yeah, I know, I had to screw it up. He considered it quite an honor to be part of the crew. And believe me, you didn't want him a part of the crew. No, you would say, out of here. It's nice to have you here, but please go away. There is a plaque on the wall in Blooming Point, our little place. It's on the wall to stay. He stopped driving a long time ago, and I must confess, I'm kind of glad of that. He got us lost more than once. And one day, it did not happen on my shift, mind you, but he was doing Morningside at the time, so the show started very early. So he got in the back of his own seat, and then he started screaming, "Jesus Christ, somebody took my steering wheel!" Yeah, that would be him. He got us lost on this island many, many times. But it's such a beautiful island. Every time I say, oh, this is so beautiful, it's nice to get lost. The worst you can do is just back up and go back where you come from. Really, how can you get lost on this island? It's easy, just ask Aaron for direction. Because of Don and Anne of Green Gable, I have many new friends, and they are his lasting, precious gift to me. Don was sometimes insecure, and he questioned his worth of my love for him. How could I not love him? He needed me so much on so many levels. My world revolved around him. He was the center of my life. He was so looking forward again to coming back this summer. I consider myself luckier than most because I can watch his DVD, I can listen to his voice. But the irreplaceable thing, the things that I miss the most, are the looks across a crowded room where you don't need any words, the holding hands, the hugs, the I love yous before you go to bed. Being someone's first love may be great. Being the last one is beyond perfect. I'm so lucky that he came late into my life, and I am blessed to have been loved by him. And that's the Don that I miss most of all. Thank you. Quote, I was born at home in bed beside a naked woman, and I wish to go out the same way. He had his wish. He was at home, he was in bed beside a woman, but naked, I'll never tell.
Anything more delectable than ice cream? Why, even the most respectable eat ice cream. It's wonderful on a summer's afternoon in June. Ice cream, the recipe's something serious, but ice cream makes everyone so delirious that ice cream is certainly worth the trouble that it takes. What does it take? It takes a tin pail, pack it with some ice, rock salt, sprinkle it on twice, big spoon to see if it tastes nice. You've got me a quiver, I'm starting to shiver for ice cream.
Please join us in song.
Of ice cream, and no one is unemployable in our scheme. You've got to keep on the double till it's set. You bet. Chill, mix, cover it up tight, turn, crank. Can't you do it right? You help. This is no time to fight. Keep on with the churning, and soon you'll be turning out ice cream. Is out of this world for tastiness, but ice cream can never be made with hastiness. So ice cream is wonderful on a summer's afternoon in June. Ice cream! Ice cream!
Thank you very much for coming on behalf of the Confederation Center of the Arts. Thank you so much. We love you, Don Harron. Please join us in the lobby for some ice cream.